In the last episode of The Wrath, we grazed over the news article from the Danialle James case and found that the district attorney prosecuting her, Kate Molina, was the same one who prosecuted me, but in polar opposite cases. In the James case, Molina was arguing that it's unlawful for a protester to demand a news videographer leave a public area and use force against the videographer.
Yeah, they're turning shit down. Pretty cute, right?
No. And no, get the fuck out of our camp. This is not what you guys are doing. Sorry.
Where's Carter?
Sorry. Yeah, get out. You really get the fuck out.
Well, that's
Fuck the media.
Whoa. Well, get the fuck out of my way, dude.
Whereas in my case, Molina was making the opposite argument, that protesters have the authority to do just that. And it's the news videographer who's guilty of crimes for trying to stop them. Let's listen in first to several audio snippets from my case where Molina, her cohort Todd Jackson, and some of the witnesses explained that this...
You need to get the fuck out of here. Get out of here, racist.
I'm not a racist, dude. Don't
Get the fuck out of here.
Don't put your hands on me.
Get the fuck out of here.
Don't put your hands on me.
Get the fuck out of here,
Do not
racist.
put your hands on me. Do not put your hands on me. Do not put your hands on me.
was peacefully asking me to leave. Then we'll listen in to Molina's contradicting arguments during the James case. And these are just sort of sound bites of different parts of the proceedings. They're not meant to be portrayed as continuous.
When one of the attendees asked Mr. Strickland to leave, there was some sort of exchange, I believe. At about the same time, Ben Carenza had also seen Mr. Strickland in the crowd. Mr. Carenza also knew Michael Strickland. Mr. Carenza and a few others decided that they were going to tell Mr. Strickland to leave. 10th is Mr. Carenza, who, after telling Mr. Strickland he needed to leave, eventually peeled away from the group and walked along the sidewalk.
I did see Mr. Strickland approached. I saw Mr. Strickland being, he started to back away from my view as people were asking him to leave the rally. And he proceeded to just back up. I could see them pointing, kind of like telling him to depart, leave. I could hear them saying, "You need to leave." Yeah.
And after these people were kind of pointing at him, and from what you think you hear telling him he needs to leave, is that when he starts walking north on 3rd?
Backing up.
Now, we have a peaceful protest, and we have somebody who's just standing there filming. And now we have individuals, 5 or 6, including Jelani, who's a Black Panther, correct?
I'm not too sure if he went into the crowd and asked him to leave. I do know at one point he was in front of Mr. Strickland asking him to leave down the street.
And these are the individuals, and up to this point, the rally's peaceful.
Yes.
And then when these people, these anarchists
Peacefully approach him.
Yes. Okay, so tell the judge exactly how it was that these anarchists, 5 or 6, dressed in bandanas and black, peacefully approached Mr. Strickland. Please tell us how that.
I believe I see them point.
Okay.
And ask him to leave. I was on the top of the steps. Ask him to leave. I was on the top of the steps, so I can't hear, but I can see pointing.
Well, eventually, Mr. Strickland was persuaded to leave and went off around the corner down.
What is this? Could you describe this scene that we're viewing on the screen?
Yeah, well, that's Mr. Strickland is being asked to leave by several people, and he's backing away from them.
After it was pointed out to you that Mr. Strickland was present in the crowd, what did you do?
Well, the individuals who had pointed out to me left briefly, and they had reapproached minutes later, and we discussed going to tell Michael to leave the event. But I do recall us discussing going to approach him to ask him to leave.
Okay. And by him, do you mean Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Okay.
Did Mr. Carenza tell you that he had asked Mr. Strickland to leave?
So according to Kate Molina, gathering up a gang of thugs to make demands that a news journalist leave a public area, then physically assault that news journalist while shouting obscenities at him is simply asking someone to leave. Except Molina changed her tune during the James case.
Yeah, they're turning shit down. Pretty cute, right?
No, and no. Get the fuck out of our camp. This is not what you guys are doing. Sorry.
Where's Carter?
Sorry. Yeah, get out. You really get the fuck out.
Well, that's
Fuck the media.
Well, get the fuck out of my way.
Hi, you guys are a fucking shit news company. Fuck, shit news company. And everybody back in the studio, y'all can kiss all of our motherfucking asses. ICE will never be abolished. That's what they said. Back in the studio, they said ICE will never be abolished. I want you guys to know that about these people. She's reporting for these maggots.
They're probably Sinclair folks.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure they think that she's funny, but of course because they're white people, they will never understand
Just wondering.
the oppression these people are being
Just wondering if you could check it out so I could.
What's that? Are you doing the web?
Yeah.
They're just checking it right now. Sorry, I have 5 people talking to me right now.
Fuck them. She's horrible. She's fuck her.
Oh, don't even start,
Fuck
ma'am.
that bitch.
Don't even start.
No, you know better than her.
Can be a fascist collaborator.
She's a
If you're
fucking
not
fash.
sitting here right now saying, hey, these people take away kids, what are you even doing? What are you even doing?
And now, let's listen into Molina's arguments during that case.
Carter Maynard was just trying to do his job when he was assaulted by Danialle James on June 28, 2018. Mr. Maynard was trying to take video footage in his job capacity as a camera operator when Miss James slammed a gate on the back of his head, causing him to experience immediate pain, resulting in a hematoma on the back of his head, resulting in a diagnostic finding of a concussion, and prolonged pain that he endured for several hours and several days afterwards. This is not a case about politics or political views. It is about Miss James's conduct on June 28, 2018. So I'd like to talk with you now about the facts that I believe you have heard that are now in the record as evidence. You heard from Carter Maynard himself, who was the one who sustained the injury. He told you he was just trying to do his job as a storyteller, to gather the information for people to view later on the news. He testified that Miss James was upset. You saw that yourself in the video. And that she didn't like that they were there. And how she continued to come up to him and his reporter, continued to make fun of Miss Ram, to get in their faces. Miss James was not happy that Mr. Maynard was filming. She was not happy with the media presence that day. Mr. Maynard testified that he did go back into the fenced encampment to get some additional footage, and that when he did, he heard someone yell, "Get the fuck out." That was Miss James. Mr. Maynard testified that he saw Miss James at the fence as he walked back through the gate. You just heard in the video Miss James' own words, "Get the fuck out, especially you." As Mr. Maynard walked through the fence, he felt a blow to the back of his head and testified that he felt immediate pain. Now, harassment. A person commits the crime of harassment if Ms. James harassed or annoyed him by subjecting Mr. Maynard to offensive physical contact, and that Ms. James intended to harass or annoy him. When he walked through that gate and she slammed it on him, shoved it in the back of his head, what other intent could she have had except to harass and annoy him? She was mad. She wanted him out. And she was trying to get back at him because she'd been angry at Miss Ram. she intended to annoy him and to harass him when she slammed the gate on the back of his head. Now, the contact is offensive if a reasonable person would regard it as offensive in the circumstances. And I would ask to you, what person wouldn't find having a gate slam on the back of their head offensive under the circumstances? I'm also going to ask you to find that she intended to subject him to offensive physical contact for the purposes of harassing and annoying him, and would ask you to return a verdict of guilty for harassment as well. Thank you. You also heard from Ms. James herself. In her own words, she told you she wanted to give Ms. Ringown a taste of her own medicine. So she took that out on Ms. Ringown's cameraman, Carter Maynard. Mr. Maynard was just trying to do his job. All the other stuff about politics doesn't really play into all of this, except that it explains why Ms. James was mad. The evidence that we have that shows her intent is her words and her conduct. We talk about that in what you're, how you decide what someone's intentions are, what their mental state is. Words and conduct. Her words, get the fuck out, especially you. Fuck the media. Her hand, her conduct, on the gate as Mr. Maynard walks through. And she's still there with her hand on the gate when he turns back around after she slammed the gate on his head. She acted, at the very least, recklessly, but also knowingly and also intentionally.
So on the one hand, Kate Molina is arguing that it's not a crime when a gang of thugs use physical force to prevent a journalist from being in a public area. But on the other hand, she's arguing that that is a crime. So if you're seeing this video at some point in the future, and you are considering hiring Kate Molina to work at your firm or to represent you in a case, how can you be sure which Kate Molina you'll get? Will you get the hypocritical, self-contradicting Kate Molina? Or will you get the other hypocritical, self-contradicting Kate Molina? Or is the answer to this as simple as black and white?